This is New Standard for Living. This cassette contains 3 messages from the Job series by Dr. Charles L. Feinberg. The first message covers Job chapter 15, verse 1 through chapter 17, verse 16. And now, here is Dr. Feinberg.
Friends, as we come in our studies in the book of Job, we have arrived at the 15th chapter. There's been Job's address at the beginning, after his tremendous trials fell upon him, and then we've had the 3 friends, their addresses, and his answer in each case. In verse 14, he has completed his answer to the final speaker of his friends, namely Zophar the Naamathite. Now we're starting the cycle again with the first friend, Eliphaz the Temanite. Thus far, the attempts of the friends to get Job to acknowledge his sin before God have failed completely and miserably. The argument on that basis has completely collapsed. Job, of course, has not answered their arguments, but he's turned them against themselves to their own dismay and discomfort. But they're far from convinced of his innocence. Though he has stated it, he has claimed it, he's presented it time and again. Job's challenge to God to appear as in a trial has struck them as irreverent. The manner of Job's conduct since he has spoken has persuaded them that his sufferings had befallen him for the reason they assigned. They become more and more certain that they are right. Now, since all 3 friends had dwelt on themes relating to God to convince Job of the error of his ways, and these had not succeeded, they now decide to emphasize what the wicked man can expect from the providential dealings of God if he continues in his sinful ways. Now, when Job realizes what the friends are doing now, he's overwhelmed, and he comprehends that they have not believed his protestations of innocence to any degree. He feels now that he's forsaken not only of God, but of man as well. Eliphaz, in his second speech, attacks Job's contention that he has a higher wisdom than they have. He denounces the irreverence with which Job has been challenging God to a judicial showdown, to a suit. He feels he's been badly treated by Job. Now, Job's remarks have actually been destructive of all godliness, he claims, as in chapter 12, verse 6, Eliphaz sets out to show him the fate of the wicked. So in verses 2 to 16, we have the rebuke of Job's contempt for his friends and his irreverence toward God. And then from verses 17 through 35, he speaks, Eliphaz does, of the conscience and the destiny of the wicked. Let's read these first 6 verses, the first paragraph as you have it indicated here in your New American Standard Bible. Then Eliphaz the Temanite responded. He answered, "Should a wise man answer with windy knowledge and fill himself with the east wind?" Just a lot of wind and emptiness and talk. "Should he argue with useless talk or with words which are not profitable? Indeed, you do away with reverence." That's a tremendous charge. "And hinder meditation before God. For your guilt teaches your mouth, and you choose the language of the crafty. Your own mouth condemns you, and not I, and your own lips testify against you." Notice, should a wise man answer. He refers to Job, who's claimed superior wisdom. If you are that wise, is this the way a wise man acts? Is that the way he talks? Does he fill himself with wind and let go with blasts of empty words? And verse 3 expresses exactly the same truth. Should he argue with useless talk or with words which are not profitable? Why spend your time on something that gets no one anywhere? You are just wasting time. You're using useless talk, and we are accomplishing nothing in the way of a solution to this tremendous problem with which we are all faced. Then, verse 4, Eliphaz makes a tremendous charge. He says, "Job, you're not only unwise, but you're aiming to do away with all fear of God and piety." His attitudes and words could affect others not to fear, not to trust God at all. They'll listen to you, and they'll not be drawn to God in humble obedience, in reverence. Rather, you will hinder such ones from giving God his rightful due. That was a charge that certainly must have cut Job to the quick. Your guilt teaches your mouth. Iniquity has been using your mouth as a tool. And your own mouth condemns you, not I. He stood condemned by his own words. Just look at what you said. Let's take them before us. Let's examine them. How can you claim innocence now when your words could only be prompted by sinful attitudes toward God? So in verses 7 to 11, he asks him, on what does your superior wisdom rest? You see, it's irked him ever since the 12th chapter. Eliphaz was told, and the rest of them as well, by Job, no doubt you're the people, and wisdom will die with you. That cut them. They are supposed to have been known for their wisdom, for their sagacity, for their insight into the ways of God and the demands of piety. So from verses 7 to 11, on what does your superior wisdom rest? Verses 7 and 8 are irony. Were you the first man to be born? Of course, to ask it is to answer it. Why do you think that you have a superior edge, an advantage over everybody else? Were you the first man to be born? Which would mean that through more years of experience you had greater wisdom, greater knowledge, greater insight. Or were you brought forth before the hills? Are you that old? This is all irony. Do you hear the secret counsel of God? Are you in on the inner workings and inner counsels of God and limit wisdom to yourself? Are you the only one that knows anything about the activities of God in the world? What do you know that we do not know? What do you understand that we do not? Both the gray-haired and the aged are among us, older than your father. The facts show he cannot claim the wisdom of the aged. Eliphaz, of course, has himself in mind. Apparently he was the older. He started off with a much more conciliatory tone than any of the others that followed him. Verse 11, are the consolations of God too small for you, even the words spoken gently with you? Are these consolations beneath your notice or concern? Don't you realize when somebody is trying to comfort you? Don't you realize when somebody is trying to assuage, to make easier, to ameliorate your agony? He's saying he did intend to console and comfort Job. He meant to encourage him. He was gentle in his approach to Job and his problems. He said, even the words spoken gently with you. Why does your heart carry you away? And why do your eyes flash that you should turn your spirit against God and allow such words to go out of your mouth? Dear Eliphaz forgets for the moment that it's Job who is the person whose heart is scalded, who's in the midst of agony, whose physical condition is such that it's practically unbearable. He wants Job to speak as dispassionately and as meditatively and as considerately as one would if he were in some academic or theological ivory tower. Why do you allow such words to go out of your mouth? Verse 13. What is man that he should be pure, or he who was born of a woman that he should be righteous? Behold, he, meaning God, puts no trust in his holy ones. And the heavens are not pure in his sight. That's how marvelously unapproachable God is in his holiness, in his deity, in his righteousness, in his ways. How much less one who is detestable and corrupt, man who drinks iniquity like water. He rebukes Job's irreverent attitude toward God. How can man claim any cleanness before God? How can you say that in any degree at all that you have never done anything to bring on you any type of chastisement or child training from God? Why are you so excited? Verse 12. Why do your eyes flash? Why does your heart carry you away? Your mind. Why does your mind keep grasping at this, that, and the other? Why are you so filled with passionate feeling? Of course, as we said already, he doesn't realize that Job cannot be expected to speak as calmly and as considerately and as measuredly in his language as one who's not going through these agonies. What is man that he should be pure? Man's protestations, man when he claims innocence, can only be pretending. Why, a man that he should be pure, what is he? It's in his very nature as a fallen creature not to be able to claim purity. He who was born of a woman that he should be righteous. No, mankind in general. How much less one who's detestable and corrupt? Man who drinks iniquity like water. He must mean mankind in general. Otherwise, he is putting a very strong statement upon Job, putting a heavy burden on his heart for him to bear. Man pants after evil as a thirsty man does after water. What a picture that is, especially for those who think man has some inherent goodness that somehow the Word of God has not taken into account. No, man is a fallen creature. He does tend toward iniquity, and definitely Eliphaz is speaking of that generally, and since you are a man too, Job, you must come under this category as well as all the rest of us. I will tell you, he says, verses 17 and 19, he claims his doctrine is that of the wise of all ages. He knows how to document his statements. He knows how to fortify them with authority, with majority opinion, if you will, among men of unmixed blood whose tradition have not been corrupted. His doctrine is certainly that of wise of all ages. I'll tell you, listen to me. And what I've seen I will also declare. What wise men have told and have not concealed from their fathers. He realizes that up to this point they're pretty much at a standoff. And he wants to break the impasse. And he wants to bring to bear on his side the authority of age, the authority of wise men, the authority of counsel of other times that could definitely change the balance onto the side of Eliphaz's arguments, to whom alone the land was given, and no alien passed among them. Since in verses 17 to 19 Eliphaz has said that his doctrine is that of the wise of all ages, he better put it before Job as to its actual worth, as to its actual demands, its details. So in verses 20 to 35, the doctrine itself. Here, the wicked is seen with forebodings of evil, in contrast to the word in chapter 12, verse 6. Let's read verse 20. The wicked man writhes in pain all his days, and numbered of the years stored up for the ruthless. Man, then, who's a sinner, wicked man, he is constantly in pain. Job would not be slow to make the application. Verse 21, sounds of terror are in his ears. While at peace, the destroyer comes upon him. He thinks he hears the coming of destruction. This is the normal way for a man who knows he has a wicked heart to react and to view the events of God's providential dealings. He doesn't believe that he will return from darkness. He's destined for the sword. In other words, he continually has apprehensions. He realizes that there is a day of reckoning from God. He knows not exactly the hour when it may fall upon him. Then verse 23, he wanders about for food, saying, where is it? He knows that a day of darkness is at hand. The rich man who oppresses the poor has visions of famine that torment him, a time when he will himself be in need. And he goes on to emphasize that distress and anguish terrify him. They overpower him like a king ready for the attack, always ready to strike him because he stretched out his hands against God and conducts himself arrogantly against the Almighty. Now in verses 25 to 28, we're going to have the reason for these pangs of conscience and forebodings of calamity. It's because of man's materialistic life, his disregard of God. He must get more and more all the time. Conducts himself arrogantly against the Almighty. He rushes headlong at him with his massive shield. Think of man, how stupid of him. He's covered his face with his fat and made his thighs heavy with flesh. He is overindulged. He's insensible to all that is spiritual and resists it. Just as we read in Deuteronomy 32, Yeshurun waxed fat and kicked. He was in such materialistic high plane that he didn't think anything could touch him. Here he is. He's covered his face with his fat, made his thighs heavy with flesh. And he's lived in desolate cities, in houses no one would inhabit, which are destined to become ruins, to settle in places destroyed through the displeasure of God was definite impiety. That's clear in Deuteronomy 13:13. They were not to go, Israel was not to go and inhabit those places. 1 Kings 16:34 as well. He will not become rich, nor will his wealth endure, and his grain will not bend down to the ground. Here's the fate of the wicked man all the way to the end of the chapter. He will not escape from darkness. The flame will wither his shoots, and by the breath of his mouth he will go away. Notice all these things in the material realm that he put so much trust in, that he banked on every day of his life. They are going to be gone. In verse 30, we have his actual destruction. Let him not trust in emptiness, deceiving himself, for emptiness will be his reward. These things are only temporal. They're transitory. They cannot satisfy his heart, and they certainly will not satisfy the heart of God when one makes them the be-all and end-all of everything. His actual destruction. It'll be accomplished before his time. And his palm branch will not be green. He will drop off his unripe grape like the vine, and will cast off his flower like the olive tree. Doubtless, when he's accumulated all these materialistic things of life and thinks he has a great span before him, that he can enjoy it, it will not come to maturity or fruition. All his labors will come short of fulfillment. It takes more than that to satisfy the human heart. And you remember the parable of our Lord in the gospel, where the rich man would build more barns and speaks to his soul to eat of materialistic things. What idiocy! What lack of comprehension of values! And God says, "O fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. And then to whom shall all these things be that you have accumulated? For the company of the godless is barren. Fire consumes the tents of the corrupt." Then verse 35, they conceive mischief and bring forth iniquity. Here it's all capsulated. Here's a condensation of his doctrine, as in chapter 4, verse 8. They conceive mischief and bring forth iniquity, and their mind prepares deception. It's all going to be something that will never, never satisfy. It will never accomplish what he thinks it will. Now, in the next two chapters, Job has to answer this. Chapters 16 and 17 give us the reply of Job to Eliphaz. Eliphaz has become more emphatic with reference to the failings of Job, actually, not only in insinuation, but in downright statement. He has put him on the same plane as wicked ones, and has said, it will never avail you. You better make sure that you turn your life around and come back to God and to his ways. So, chapter 16 and 17 are Job's considered answer to this one who first started the cycle of speeches, Eliphaz the Temanite. At the end of Eliphaz's speech, Job realizes that both God and men are against him, determined to prove him guilty. And it's this sense of aloneness, forsakenness, that runs throughout Job's speeches in this next cycle. The climax, the very climax, high point to this emotion, is found in the 19th chapter, verses 21 to 23. And we do just as well right at this point to read them. Job 19, 21 to 23. This is what Job says. Pity me, O you, my friends, for the hand of God has struck me. Why do you persecute me as God does, and are not satisfied with my flesh? Why don't you allow me to have a breathing spell? Oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. What a statement. That's one of the famous passages of the book of Job. That's the climax to this emotion. He feels completely forsaken. He feels all has left him but the conviction of his innocence. And he's all the more determined to cling to it. Otherwise, how can he scarcely stand it at all and retain his sanity? The reply of Job can be divided into four parts. In the first 5 verses of chapter 16, Job is weary of his friends' monotonous speech and maintains his right to reject them, just as he did in the previous cycles. In the second place, in verses 6 to 17 of this 16th chapter, he describes his isolation and the enmity, the hatred, hostility God and men have shown toward him, though he is innocent. And then, in the third place, in chapter 16, verses 18 through 17th chapter, verse 9, he says his condition cannot continue forever. This has to stop somewhere. He may die, but his blood will cry out for vindication until he's cleared. He expresses confidence in a witness in heaven. God is his witness, who will plead with God for him and do justice in this suit between God and him and men. He yearns for some indication to this effect even before he dies. And then in chapter 17, verses 10 to 16, certain of a speedy death from that present unbearable sickness, Job derides the hopes of restoration as far as this life is concerned. He doesn't hold any hope of restoration that's been indicated, promised him by his friends. He will die, and his only hope is the grave. So in chapters 16 and 17, we have this remarkable answer of Job. Let's read it together. Then Job answered, I've heard many such things. Sorry, sorry, comforters, are you all. Comforters of trouble. They are comforters of no value whatever. He's weary of these monotonous words. Is there no limit to windy words? Or what plagues you that you answer? Do you have to? I'm in agony. I have to say something. But why do you have to keep piling up that which literally tears my heart? I too could speak like you if I were in your place. I could compose words against you and shake my head at you. I could strengthen you with my mouth. I would try a different angle altogether. I have a right to reject all that you imply and all that you state. The solace of my lips, that's the comfort of my lips, could lessen your pain. I would treat you entirely differently than you're treating me. Don't forget how isolated I am. Don't forget, though innocent, I have not been shown the type of treatment, either from God or you, that I could have expected. If I speak, my pain is not lessened. If I hold back, what has left me? But now he has exhausted me, meaning God. Thou hast laid waste all my company. Thou shriveled me up. It's become a witness. And my leanness rises up against me. It testifies to my face. His anger has torn me and hunted me down. He has gnashed at me with his teeth. My adversary glares at me. God's against me. They've gaped at me, his friends now. They've gaped at me with their mouth. They've slapped me on the cheek with contempt. They've massed themselves against me as if he were the prime enemy, as though he were enemy number one on the FBI list, as we'd say today. God hands me over to ruffians and tosses me into the hands of the wicked. I was at ease, but he shattered me, and he has grasped me by the neck and shaken me to pieces. He has also set me up as his target, as if I were the one that God wants above all others to bring to judgment. His arrows surround me. Without mercy, he splits my kidneys open. You can imagine what physical pain he was going through, let alone mental agony and spiritual dejection. He pours out my gall on the ground. He breaks through me with breach after breach. He runs at me like a warrior. I've sewed sackcloth over my skin. Now remember, he's speaking out of the agony of his heart, but just think of what these words are by way of high-class literary style and the thought patterns that he goes from one area to another. It's a remarkable piece of literature just on that angle alone. I have sewed sackcloth over my skin and thrust my horn in the dust. My face is flushed from weeping, and deep darkness is on my eyelids. He doesn't try to hide the fact that he has been torn and been hurt to the very depths of his soul by this. He cannot take such condition as he's in lightly, although there's no violence in my hands and my prayer is pure. Oh, that would strike his friends as altogether contrary to the situation. Oh, earth! He addresses the earth now. From this point on, he is going to speak of his condition as irremediable. O earth, do cover my blood. Let there be no resting place for my cry. Even now, behold, my witness is in heaven, and my advocate is on high. Believe by faith, he felt that there was someone in heaven who was pleading his cause. We know who he is. In the New Testament, for us, our advocate is with the Father, the Lord Jesus Christ. My friends are my scoffers. Think of it. That's quite a turn. It doesn't say that they're sympathizers or they just stand by idly and say nothing, but they're scoffers. My eye weeps to God. Oh, that a man might plead with God as a man with his neighbor. There's too big a distance, you see. Thank God. That distance has been bridged, bless God, by the incarnation, when the second person of the Trinity, the Blessed Trinity, has become man, taken upon himself human flesh, so that he, in all their affliction, he's afflicted. And he knows our agonies. He's touched with the feeling of our infirmities. For when a few years are past, I shall go the way of no return. Indicates that he doesn't believe that there's going to be any change in his condition. But he says, I may die, but my blood is going to cry out for vindication until it's cleared. My spirit is broken, my days are extinguished, the grave is ready for me. Surely mockers are with me, and my eye gazes on their provocation. Lay down now a pledge for me with thyself. Who is there that will be my guarantor? You can't argue with God, for thou hast kept their heart from understanding, therefore thou wilt not exalt them. He who informs against friends for a share of the spoil, the eyes of his children also shall languish. A man that bears false testimony, even though he has a marvelous, marvelous witness in heaven, What about this condition on earth? He wants vindication here. This is where he's suffering. This is where he needs to be clear. This is where he needs to be shown that his whole concept of God is not wrong. But he has made me a byword of the people, verse 6, and I'm one at whom men spit. That was a very grievous thing in those days. My eye has also grown dim because of grief, and all my members are a shadow. They're just as something that is so ethereal, so transitory, so lacking in lasting quality. The upright shall be appalled at this, and the innocent shall stir up himself against the godless. Nevertheless, the righteous shall hold to his way, and he who has clean hands shall go stronger and stronger. But come again, all of you now, for I don't find a wise man among you. My days are past, as if all is gone already. My plans are torn apart, even the wishes of my heart. Yes, some vindication he wants just before he dies. If he could only find that, how happy he would be. Certain of a speedy death, he derides the hope that anything's going to be changed. Don't tell me that if I just do something that you're now counseling, everything will be restored. They make night into day, saying the light is near in the presence of darkness. If I look for Sheol as my home, I make my bed in the darkness. If I call to the pit, you are my father. To the worm, my mother and my sister, means he's come to the end of all things. Where now is my hope? And who regards my hope? Will it go down with me to Sheol? Shall we together go down into the dust? You see, dear friends, he is on Old Testament ground. And we cannot say that, well, he should have realized that there's a life after death. Remember, that was not fully revealed. Even resurrection could not be a solace to him, because the hope of resurrection came only when the Lord Jesus Christ, who died in a human body, was buried in the grave of a man, rose again, that human body, and now glorified humanity. He has begotten us again. He has given us a hope that fades not away. It is a hope of resurrection. There was no such thing. Oh, there were resuscitations, as with Lazarus, as with Elijah and his ministry, but nothing like resurrection. So he says, will it go down with me to Sheol, that hope? Shall we together go down into the dust? There is no hope of restoration. You're just holding out an empty hope to me. It will never be realized. We'll start with our next chapter next time. God bless you.
Dr. Feinberg's second message covers Job chapter 18, verse 1 through chapter 20, verse 11. Here again is Dr. Feinberg.
Friends, we are now in our study of Job at the 18th chapter. In our previous study, we had the speech of Eliphaz the Temanite and Job's answer to that. Now Bildad the Shuhite, the second friend, he is giving us his second address. Bildad speaks now for the second time, and he holds that the sinner's punishment, notice it, came mainly from his own conscience. Job replies to that, you remember, in the 16th chapter and the 12th verse. And he says there, I was at ease, but he shattered me. He has grasped me by the neck and shaken me to pieces. He's also set me up as his target. It is not just a matter of one thinking all these things up from his own conscience. There is some reality to it outside of the individual. Now listen to Bildad the Shuhite. How long, he says, how long will you hunt for words, show understanding, and then we can talk? You've gone totally out of the area of logical thinking and speaking. Why are we regarded as beasts, as stupid in your eyes? Can't we say anything that you will take as valid, he's saying? Or you who tear yourself in your anger. For your sake is the earth to be abandoned, or the rock to be moved from its place, just because you're using a great deal of passionate speech and showing a great deal of emotion, because you're angry? Do you think the whole world is going to get out of your way? Do you think things are going to be changed because of that? Indeed, the light of the wicked goes out, and the flame of his fire gives no light. Notice the light of the wicked. The light in his tent is darkened. His lamp goes out above him. The implication and application are clear. He is indicating that Job is having this difficult trial because of his wickedness. He says his vigorous stride is shortened. in his own scheme, brings him down. Everything goes to rack and ruin, for he's thrown into the net by his own feet. You bring about your own undoing. And he steps on the webbing. A snare seizes him by the heel, and a trap snaps shut on him. In other words, you play with sin, you are going to bear the consequences of it, and they are of your own making. A noose for him is hid in the ground, and a trap for him on the path. All around terrors frighten him and harry him at every step. His strength is famished, and calamity is ready at his side. Notice there's not one word of relief. There's not one word of hope, of expectation for Job. His skin is devoured by disease. The firstborn of death devours his limbs, means death is eating slowly but surely away at him. What is Bildad doing? He assigns the condition of Job to the order of nature and the moral instinct of mankind. The 20th chapter, Zophar sees it, the retributive working of sin itself, a recompense. Bildad was displeased with Job's speech for two reasons. Job had used very harsh words against his friends in the 16th chapter and in the 17th chapter. And, he says, you have spoken impiously of God. He's going to speak of that toward the end of this 18th chapter. The principal trend of his speech, and we don't want to miss that, is the certainty of the doom. Hear it. The certainty of the doom of the wicked through the fixed order of the world that God himself has placed there, and the moral instincts of man. The steps in the decline and fall of the wicked are given in verses 5 to 7. Remember how the light goes out, the flame of his fire does, the light in his tent's darkened, and so on. His stride is shortened. There it is. The sinner's light is put out. That's the principle. Then verses 8 to 11, we've just been in, the stages in his downfall. It's just as if he goes along rather evenly in the tenor of his ways, and before he knows it, he has stepped into a net, or a snare, or a trap. His foot gets caught, or a noose, and terror on every side. The stages in his downfall. Then the final scenes, we just read them. His strength is famished, calamity is ready at his side. His skin is devoured by disease. The firstborn of death devours his limbs, means death itself has him in its clutch. He's torn from the security of his tent, and they march him before the king of terrors. The king of terrors, of course, is death itself, as we have it in Hebrews 2. Man in his unsaved state is ever and always a captive of terror, and Christ Jesus died, and from the one who had power over death, the fear of death, Satan, Christ vanquished him and made an open show of him in the cross. So the final scenes. Now, as if that were not enough, here we have Bildad the Shuhite going on further and talking about the blotting out of the name of a sinner, a wicked man. That meant very much in the Oriental world then and now. Here one wants a continuation of his life. That's why children, descendants, were so important, that their name might not be forgotten. Notice it. There dwells in his tent nothing of his. Brimstone is scattered on his habitations. His roots are dried below, and his branches cut off above. Notice, memory of him perishes from the earth. He has no name abroad. It's as if he didn't live at all. His life was spent for nothing. Then verses 18 to 21, men's fear at his fate and memory. They will never invoke his name as one a blessing or one that they would like to emulate, they would like to follow. No, he's driven from light into darkness, chased from the inhabited world. He has no offspring, here it is, or posterity among his people, nor any survivor where he sojourned. You remember the law, the Levirate law? That was important. A man who left no one to carry on his name, his widow could take a member of his family, and the firstborn would carry on his name, just as you find it in the book of Ruth. Nor any survivor where he sojourned. Those in the west are appalled at his fate, and those in the east are seized with horror. They look at him and say, my, let's not follow that kind of a life. That man must have sinned so terribly against the Lord. And that's true even in certain areas today. Many folks see an affliction of a child, a child that's infirm, a child that comes with some kind of impairment, physical or mental. They say, oh, may we not be so judged of God. My friends, that is not the scriptural answer to this kind of providential dealing. But they say, and Bildad the Shuhite tells us in conclusion, surely such are the dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him who does not know God. Think of how far Bildad the Shuhite has come, where he can compare the life of Job and his activity, his aims in life, his reverence before God. He can take all that and say, this is the place of one who does not know God, and Job would be one to whom that could be applied. When we have in the first 2 chapters, remember, that is the all-determining interpretive principle on all these speeches. They could not know what God was saying to Satan, but it put God on record, thank God, that he boasted of Job to Satan. Job certainly knew God. A righteous man, one who feared God, a God-fearing man, a reverent man, and one who turned aside from evil. He made it the purpose of his life. He made it the tenor of his life to have nothing to do with evil. Now, after a speech like that of Bildad the Shuhite, then Job responded. You'd expect him to. How long will you torment me and crush me with words? These 10 times, he's not saying that just in exact numerical value, means a number of times. These 10 times you have insulted me. You're not ashamed to wrong me, even if I have truly erred. My error lodges with me. What's it your business? If indeed you vaunt yourselves against me and prove my disgrace to me, know then that God has wronged me and has closed his net around me. He'd been talking, remember, in verse 8 about thrown into the net by his own feet and so on. He said, it's God who's closed his net around me. In replying to Bildad, Job is aware that all his allusions to the wicked are meant for him. Of course, he's not just speaking in some kind of an academic or philosophical address. His whole nature, Job's whole being, protests against this baseless, unfounded charge. He's impressed more and more of the way in which he has been forsaken, and is profoundly conscious of his own innocence. See, these men, these friends that came, were quiet for a period of time, and they saw how Job was suffering. And then when he began to curse the day of his birth, they began having less and less a concept of his worth and of his piety, of his godliness. And then when they began counseling him, see if there isn't something wrong in you. That was Eliphaz the Temanite who started off that way. Whoever heard of the righteous suffering and so on, or being blotted out of the earth. Then they took that cue, the other friends did, you remember, Bildad and Zophar, each one did. And the more they saw Job determined to say there was no specific sin in him of such an abominable nature that this tremendous agony physically and mentally should come upon him, they were all the more determined. They thought that somewhere along the line, even early, Job would collapse and come to their position. Now, Job had held with them that God treats the righteous one way, he treats the wicked another way, but he says those are God's general principles. You're trying to apply them to me, and you are strangulating these principles. You're making them apply to me even when they do not have any resemblance of truth. He's profoundly conscious of his own innocence. By a sudden insight, he's assured of the fact that his innocence will yet be revealed, that God will enter on his behalf to vindicate him. This is beautiful in this chapter. And that he will finally see God. What are the divisions? Well, let's look at these first 6 verses. We've read them in his response. He says he's impatient with the denunciations of his friends. He disallows the conclusions they draw from his afflictions. He said, you're on the wrong track. You're making up your own theology. It has no semblance of relationship to the facts. God has brought his trials on him even though he's blameless. Well, that would kill their theology. They couldn't realize for the moment, it seems that somewhere along the line here, when Job reasons with them, that they would have been jarred out of this position and realize that God might have not only general providences, but has specific providences. And as we've said earlier in our studies of Job, you go through your Bible and you'll find that those who were the godliest suffered the most. Yes, God has other reasons in allowing suffering other than in chastisement, in punishment, in judgment upon the wicked. Now in verses 7 to 27, he is occupied with the thought of God as the originator of all his calamities, but finally feels God must appear as his vindicator. All those beautiful verses in 25 to 27 that we're going to see. Let's look now at verses 7 to 27. God originated his calamities, but somehow or other, he didn't know how, but I know God well enough, he says, to know that he will vindicate me. Behold, I cry violence, but I get no answer. I shout for help, but there's no justice. He has walled up my way so that I cannot pass. He's hemmed in on every side. He has put darkness on my path. He has stripped my honor from me. Surely Job, even on the physical level, must have looked a very, very sorry specimen of humanity. He stripped my honor from me, removed the crown from my head. In other words, all self-worth is gone. He breaks me down on every side and I'm gone. And he has uprooted my hope like a tree, just left as a bit of a straw, as it were, in a tempest, in a gale. He has also kindled his anger against me and considered me as his enemy. Now, he knew from the beginning that was not so, but they have somehow been so insistent that he's the object of God's anger. So he's taken that note, but he doesn't say it's because of his sin. He knows he has not sinned in order to bring this particular type of calamity upon me. He's also kindled his anger against me and considered me as his enemy. His troops come together, those are his providences, and build up their way against me and camp round my tent. He can't turn anywhere but what he's hemmed in. He's removed my brothers far from me. My acquaintances are completely estranged from me. They don't want to have anything to do with him. My relatives have failed. My intimate friends have forgotten me. He's a man left alone before God. Those who live in my house and my maids consider me a stranger. See, he was out there away from all of them with this dread malady and disease. I'm a foreigner in their sight. I call him my servant. He doesn't answer. I have to implore him with my mouth. My breath is offensive to my wife, and I'm loathsome to my own brothers. Even young children despise me. I rise up, and they speak against me. He's lost not only all self-respect, he has lost all respect of his contemporaries, even of those who were in his employ. All my associates, the men of my counsel, abhor me, and those I love have turned against me for no other reason than they think this is what they ought to do because he has hidden something from them, but God knows it, and God is bringing him into account for it. My bone clings to my skin and my flesh. He's suffering physically. I've escaped only by the skin of my teeth. That's where we get the expression, skin of the teeth. He said, I'm just barely alive. Pity me, oh, you my friends. Why can't I get some milk of human kindness directed my way? For the hand of God has struck me. He knew no man had brought this malady upon him. Why do you persecute me as God does, and are not satisfied with my flesh? Don't you think God's doing a good enough business? Don't you think he's doing a good enough work on laying his hand heavily upon me? Why do you have to help in this area? Oh, that my words were written. He wants these words written, and they are, thank God. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book.
The remainder of this message is on the other side of the cassette. Please stop your cassette player now and turn the cassette over. It's not necessary to rewind or fast-forward your cassette.